And welcome to the Comic Corner, where we do news reviews and interviews for all things comics. My name is Damon. I'm joined with my good buddy from the West Coast, TJ Fat Thor. How you doing today?
I'm super excited. We have a wonderful guest, one of my absolute favorite writers writing comics right now. So I cannot be doing better right now.
He's written things like Action Comics with Superman, The Incredible Hulk, and so many more. Batman and Robin. We're here to talk all of it. Phillip Kennedy Johnson, how are you doing?
Hey guys, I'm good. I'm good. Thanks for having me on.
Of course, we're excited to have you on. And something I always ask everyone when they come on for the very first time is your comic book origin story. Now, I know your dad would like bring home like comics from like garage sales and you go reading those. Is there any like comics in particular that you remember from way back when?
The ones that I think back to the most probably are I had a lot of Superman and Batman stuff that were a massive impact on me. Um, so I had a lot of each, like individually, like a lot of Detective Comics and Batman and Superman in action, but there were also a lot of World's Finest. When I say a lot, it's all relative. Like there's actually kind of a small collection of books compared to most people I know now. But man, I loved them. And I also had a fair bit of Marvel team up where Spider-Man would team up with whoever for that particular like one shot or two issue adventure. And those were really great too. That was a great way for me to get to know the Marvel roster because he'd do a couple issues with Doctor Strange or Ghost Rider or Johnny Torch or whoever. Like it was Johnny Blaze. Um, so yeah, it was always just a really great way in to get to know the rogues gallery, but also the different A, B, C, D list heroes. And I also had a big stack of kind of cartoony stuff, and I would just kind of go on a streak where I'd read either the DC pile, the Marvel pile, and the stuff that's like the forerunners to Ducktales, basically, like a lot of Scrooge McDuck, Huey, Dewey, Louie, um, Baby Huey, Richie Rich, Beagle Boys. Sometimes I'd just be in the mood for that because all when I was like real young. But I mean, whenever somebody asks me that kind of a question, though, the first thing I always think of is Batman and Superman. Those guys were kind of they represent such different but such important power fantasies, especially at the age when I was reading them for the first time.
And I mean, that's so perfect to start off with Superman Batman, two titles. Obviously, you had an amazing run on Superman and you're taking on Batman and Robin. And I wanted to ask you too. So, you again learned how to read comics from all these garage sale comics and you got into making your own little comic strips. You said you really got into like imitating what you saw in books. But then you found your way into music and you actually kind of started a career in music for a while. And so I'm a musical guy myself. I did a lot of music theory. I went to New Orleans and studied jazz a little bit. And so I got to ask, in your opinion, being a musical guy, what are some of the similarities between writing or performing music and then writing comics and being able to kind of convey a message or an emotion through art?
Oh man, I it's hard to even draw those lines to differentiate what makes them different. Like it's harder to. I mean, I so for those who don't know, my day job, which actually I'm finishing up now. I'm just about to do 20 years. I've been in one of the military bands in the DC area for quite a while. Um, and I was doing that before I started doing comics. And people will sometimes ask me, "Oh, how has your time in the army influenced your work?" But really, it's my time is. I mean, and it has like the arm being in the army is all about just losing your identity and being part of the team, and it's all about the team effort. And it's made me a better collaborator for sure. And of course, I know a lot of stories just being in the army, like the actual specific stories that I know through my colleagues have also found their ways into my storylines. But my time as a musician actually was really what made me um, a better fit for comic books. I Comics just feel like small group jazz to me, man. Like everything is it's a very small creative team, and everyone has their part to play. And if you replace any one person, like if you're in like a jazz quintet, say, where you got piano, bass, drums, a couple of horns or something, if you replace any one person, the entire product changes. Like everyone else adapts to that difference, you know. Even if it's somebody that you might not be consciously listening to, like the bassist, maybe, that influence is felt all the way through. And it's the same thing with like an inker or a letterer or, you know, an editor or anything. Like anyone who's involved, if their contributions impact everyone else's contributions. There are differences, obviously, but I don't know. The similarities are so profound. And not just between music and comics, but between music and comics and prose or film or animation, or like anytime I mean, I can't really identify. It's hard to put into words why it is that way, but I mean, just like watching and appreciating the show Breaking Bad made me a better composer in a way that I cannot really express in a rational way. I just knew it to be true. Like there are these similarities in storytelling and just in high level art, like fine art, that just gives you a higher appreciation of it in other mediums, in other media, you know? So yeah, it's my time as a musician, which continues now. I still play and compose. That continues to impact my work as a writer.
And boy, does it do it beautifully, because we're here to talk about a lot of the comics that you have done. And that, of course, we shall begin with, naturally, it had to be Superman's Action Comics, the War World Saga, because this saga, it is over at this point. But I told you when I met you at Terrificon here in Connecticut that this is the saga, this is the era of Superman that really brought me back into Superman, really brought me back into Action Comics. And I love to ask you, just as a reflective point, now that this War World Saga is over, what's just your most proudest thing about telling this entire story that is now just a complete epic of a saga?
Well, thanks for your kind words. I'm super proud of it. A moment from it that I'm proud of, is that the question?
Yeah.
Man, I mean, I'm so proud to have contributed to the work that a lot of those artists did. I mean, there were so many artists involved, and so many of them did just career-defining work. Man, at the very, very beginning, when I got the chance to write Superman and Action Comics both, I just could not believe my good fortune. And I was just kind of always in the back of my head waiting for the other shoe to drop. Like something's going to happen. I'm going to lose this. Like I'm going to get hit by a truck or like something. I don't know what's going to happen, but I just really I did not want to waste a moment of this opportunity. And my first actual issues were the Future State things. So I did Superman, Future State, Worlds of War. Worlds of War, parts 1 and 2. It was this 2-parter. And that was kind of like that and Future State House of L. Those were kind of my my statement of faith kind of what Superman was. They kind of summed up the mission statement of what the War World Saga was going to be. It was like my statement of here's what's coming, you know? So Worlds of War was the kind of the statement of, it kind of summed up what the War World Saga was going to be. And then House of L was kind of about the legacy of Superman. So if something had happened, if, you know, COVID had just taken out the comics industry completely and there were no more DC Comics or whatever, everything that I did after that with all my different artists and editors and everybody that was involved was kind of summed up in those 3 issues. And I'm still, even though I'm extremely proud of everything we did after that, I'm still very, very proud of those first 3 issues that we did. Mikhail Hanin drew the Worlds of War issues and was just, I could not believe how good it turned out. Like his art, I mean, I knew how great he was, but his pages in those issues were just, I was just gobsmacked every week looking at the stuff that was coming in. And Scott Godlewski did the House of L story, and he just became like a brother to me. I love his take on Superman. as far as like during the actual War World saga, the moments that I remember most clearly, I guess, like that my mind kind of goes back to. There's this one moment that everyone brings up after, let's see, after Superman and the Authority like lose when they first go up there. Superman's in the dungeons, and Midnighter has killed his way in there. He's like, "Come on, we're getting out of here," and he's like, "I'm not going anywhere." And they kind of have this back and forth, and Midnighter gets super pissed. He was like, do you think we won that fight? Like, what do you think we're doing here? Like, we got our asses kicked, and they cheered for that. Like, Leah's dead. We're leaving. And he's like, I'm not leaving. And there's that moment where Midnighter is like, we followed you here. Like, we listened to your big line about hope, and we followed you here. And, we are the ones that believed in you. These people cheered. Are their lives really worth more to you than ours? And he said, no, not more, but not less. And he just refused to leave until they're all saved, even though they don't want his help. So that was a moment that people always bring up. And it's funny because actually there was another moment in that same issue that I thought was going to be the thing that people still like, but it wasn't the one. That's the one that they grabbed onto. But the one that I thought they were going to grab onto was right before that. Let's see, what did he say then? It was actually part of the same conversation where he's like, we just got our ass kicked, and these people cheered for that. They cheered as we got, beaten and killed. And Superman said, what should we do then? Abandon them? Like, let's see, he said, what should we do then? Abandon the ones who don't cheer for us? Is that what our heroes taught us? I thought that was going to be the thing, but it wasn't. It was the other one. So that's one moment. There was also an annual that I wrote alongside Cy Spurrier. And we did, like Cy wrote 20 pages of a very young Clark on Earth. And I wrote 20 pages of Mongol on Warworld. And it kind of shows how their mothers influenced them. There had already been a lot of father-son stories in my run, but also in other Superman runs. And there are fewer mother stories. And I hadn't yet really shown the role of Warzone women on Warworld. We've done a lot of world building. That was one element we hadn't really got into much yet. And I really wanted to look for an opportunity to do that. And so on Earth, we see a very young Clark Kent at this pivotal moment where he kind of makes a decision. We see his powers are kind of coming together. And there's a moment where he does something he kind of goes for like some petty justice, using his powers in a way that any of us probably would, in a way that, Clark is on the path to becoming kind of ordinary, ethically, and his mother course corrects him in a way that helps make him extraordinary. So we see that come together in those 20 pages where you see him become bigger than the rest of us and just show us the way, Meanwhile, on Warworld, we see a very young Mongol, if anything, kind of inclined towards compassion, just slightly, or like mercy. And his mother course corrects him and helps him become extraordinary too, but in the other direction. It's like, no, if you want to survive here, you better get your shit straight. And this is how we survive. Like, if you show mercy if you pull your punches and show mercy for these other losers, we're going to die here. And she helps make him exceptional. And she shows him great cruelty through that whole issue. She's like a super cruel mother, but she saves him that way. And in the end, she makes him so hard that he's willing to kill and cannibalize his own mother to survive, basically. Like she succeeded in the way that Ma Kent succeeded, but in their separate environments. So that was another issue that was very important. So yeah, I think about that annual showing how Mongol is Clark's diametric opposite, and that other story that just kind of showing Superman being, just showing us the way.
I totally agree. And a strange debate I've had in my comic shop Comic shops. I love my comic shops, and they're always home for very fun and very interesting comic book debates. And one of them is that a Superman story grounded where he maybe like he's saving a cat from a tree, he's not utilizing his powers,
Uh,
is not fully utilizing Superman to his extent. But I'd almost argue the opposite, just like it was with that Cy Spurrier story in the first half of that annual, where it means more when he is at his most human.
yeah, something that one of the mission statements of the run, like one of the touchstone elements of Superman that I tried to always come back to, is that the only reason Superman's powers should be on the page is to illustrate how incorruptible he is. Like, that is super important. We can't just see him do some big awesome thing just for its own sake or because it looks cool on the page. It has to somehow serve him being selfless, to show his humility, to show his compassion for others, to show how much he cares about the least of us. You know, that is just a crucial part of his character. You can't see him just kicking somebody's ass because he can. That's something that I had to come back to constantly. It's funny. There was at some point there were these. I got these little what are these? Like the editor at the time handed out these little guide, like these little source book guide things. Like, here's what's important about Flash. Here's what's important about Superman. And the Superman thing had a couple that I actually contested a little bit. Like, can I make my own one of these? Because mine are different than this. And they weren't like bad. There was nothing like untrue on the page about who Superman is. I didn't feel like those are the things that were important. There was one thing that said we have to see Superman in every issue. We have to see Superman saving someone while smiling. And I thought back to some really great Superman stories, and sometimes that does happen, and it feels great when it does. Like, you see him. A great example of that was Grant Morrison and Frank Wiley's All-Star run, where he saves the jumper. And that's always my first thought. Whenever people talk about those moments, like the cat thing, obviously it's a human being and not a cat, but it's not a move. I don't think you even see him fly on that page. I think he just kind of appears. He's just a guy standing. There's a girl standing at the edge of this building, dropping her phone, crying, clearly about to jump. And then he's just behind her. And he tells her that she's stronger than she thinks she is. And then they hug and she's okay. And that's it. That's the page that everyone fucking goes back to. Everyone remembers that page. And I hung out with Grant in Glasgow a couple of years ago. And he told me that somebody told him that page had saved her actual life. That's the goal, man. Like, that's what we all want, like for Superman to have that kind of an impact. So yeah, I totally agree. And people talk about, no one's ever told me that I've saved their life with the story, but there's a story that people do talk to me about sometimes is the beginning of right after Superman comes home, he's sitting in the sky with his construction worker friend, just talking, like having lunch and talking.
Oh yeah. Oh, I love that. Yes.
People talk about that too. And again, he's aside from him flying away at the end, they're just two guys hanging out.
Yeah. And he always just saw the best in people.
Yeah. Yeah. He's like this ex-con, and now he's okay. Superman made him okay. Then we see that character later. I wrote that character. I named him after a friend of mine that I've gotten to know online a little bit. He's this huge Superman fan, so I named him after him. So anyway, yeah, it's those are the moments. For whatever reason, it's not usually the big visual moments that stick with people in that way, that like calcify themselves in your mind. Yeah. It's the emotional moments, like Midnighter in the prison, or like the jumper, of course. Like, I'm not going to compare my shit to that. That's the gold standard moment. Yeah, those are always the moments people think about. So, or like think about any movie that really resonated with you and stuck with you, and what moments stick with you. And very often, at least for me, it's some kind of an emotional beat. It's not usually the big visual thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I love Superman. I've loved your Superman. I'd love to see you come back to Superman at some point, hopefully soon.
Yeah.
It's been great seeing just how much love Superman's gotten, but we have a lot of other stuff to get to. So I'm gonna let TJ
Yeah, whatever
take
you guys
over
want.
here because he has been loving your incredible.
Ah, thanks, man.
Dude, it is so good. So Damon is more the DC guy here on the channel. I'm more of the Marvel guy, and I have been saying for a long time I think this is the best book Marvel has been putting out for a long
Oh,
time.
thank
And
you, man.
something that I'm a huge mythology nerd. I know you are as well.
Sure am.
I got to hear you talk before the series started. I got to hear you talk about it at San Diego, the previous San Diego in 2023. And you talk about how before the run started, you talked about how you really wanted to kind of flesh out American folklore and mythology, similar to how Tolkien did with English mythology.
Yeah.
So now that we have kind of gotten really into the weeds with Eldis, the mother of horrors, we're getting new monsters every week. How do you balance sort of creating new mythology, especially in this horror vein, and also building on mythology, especially with what Al Ewing did in Immortal Thor or Immortal Hulk, and you also incorporate what Donny Cates just left us off with in his Hulk run as well. So again, how do you balance that creating and also building?
Man, that's a really great question. It's also very broad. I'll try to feel free to steer me back to what you want to know as I go here. If I
Hey,
get into the
I
weeds.
want to know everything. So if we could sit here for 3 hours, I'd sit here and just it'll be a lecture.
Well, I'm happy to go a little long if you guys want, but balancing it all. So as a creator, I'm inclined to just like make new shit constantly. Like I would love to just introduce a new monster every time and just never look back. But I know it's also a Hulk book, man, and I have to respect it as part of a shared universe. It is. I also really love tying this stuff into existing mythology. And the more that we learn about the mother of horrors, the more you're going to see that to be true. Um, when I show like where she comes from, who she is, how she ties into that earlier stuff, all like the real, like the hardcore, the real ones are gonna be rewarded for their
I've
realness.
seen that you've called out Thor and Silver Surfer specifically for their kind of histories, and obviously I go by Fat Thor. I'm a huge Thor guy, so that immediately piqued my interest on that whole
Yeah,
corner of Mother of Horror or Eldest.
yeah. There's the history of Earth in the Marvel universe is already reasonably well established, but there are still little holes in the lore that I found as I was kind of peeking around. I was like, huh. Whenever I found a question that wasn't entirely answered or not answered like thoroughly enough to satisfy me, I'd kind of make a little note like, all right, let's see if this goes somewhere. So as I was doing some deep diving, I did find some threads to pull on. So we're gonna try to tie that. We're gonna try to flesh out the Marvel universe even that extra little bit, you know. But as far as bringing out like guest stars, like little appearances of things, part of it is because I loved like taking what I'm making and weaving it into the rest of the universe that exists. It's a really fun and rewarding challenge. And also just as a nerd, I love seeing that shit myself. So it'd be cool. But I know I am inclined to just make new stuff all the time, and I try to temper that with the shared universe elements. Uh Sorry, what else did you ask me? There were a lot of different elements to that question.
Yeah, like I said, just I guess particularly the horror kind of mythology that you're creating for
Mhm.
this. Like I said, you're building obviously a lot on the previous runs, but you're also, like you were talking about, you're fleshing out kind of some of the corners of the Earth lore that have been maybe ignored or not really acknowledged before.
Yeah. Well, okay. So you talk about tying it into earlier runs too.
Mhm.
The hardest part about taking this gig was like, how do I not just do Immortal Hulk all over again? Because it was so dope. But I kind of found my way in through my love of folklore. Like I love Cronenberg too, and Al Ewing clearly does. That whole run felt very Cronenberg to me. Felt very like black science body horror kind of.
Mhm.
And I wanted to take more of a Mignola kind of take. So this is that, you know, but I tried to build on the existence of the one below all because now Hulk is just intrinsically linked to that stuff. So it would have been lame to just ignore it, I think. Plus, I just love it. I wanted to see more Immortal Hulk. I wanted to reward the Immortal Hulk fans. But I also wanted to use part of, the thing that had happened most recently was Donnie's run. And I did think that there was a kind of a cool opportunity. The fact that Banner has basically enslaved Hulk now, it gave us an opportunity to make Hulk the legit monster of the book, where he's the one that's after Banner the whole time, like basically trying to get revenge. So that was really interesting. And that kind of comes from my love of collaboration, man. Even the people that came before me that are not actively involved at this moment. I read all of Bendis' stuff leading up to my run, and Tomasi's before that too. But there was, I felt like Bendis' Superman stuff teed up the next Mongol to really be a compelling villain. There was already a fair bit of Mongol in the book, but at some point he killed Mongol, and now his son is Mongol. And that gave us an opportunity to take a villain that I thought it was often portrayed very one-dimensional and make him much more interesting. So that was kind of where I got some of my ideas for my Superman run. With the Donnie stuff in Hulk, that was the reason for that. I feel like it's important to, it's almost like improv or something. Like
jazz, baby.
Well, yeah, I'm talking like stand-up. Like actually, it's another Bendis thing. Bendis is obsessed with improv comedy, and he talks about just the need to yes and everything. Like if something is some kind of element is getting passed around the group, you have to yes and whatever the person did before you. You can't be like, no, that's not true. Here's what actually happened. You don't want to back up and like erase somebody else's shit that happened right before you step up. And that was the case for Donnie's thing. I was like, this is a great opportunity. Like Immortal Hulk is the thing that I just could not wait to get back to. But Donnie's stuff was also very valuable in getting to the direction that we landed on. And it was just crucial to yes and that story. Yeah,
I loved Battleship Hulk, and that leads me perfectly into the next thing I wanted to ask you before we move on to, your other great titles. But again, the relationship between Banner and Hulk off of Donnie's run is probably the worst it's ever been. And a quote that I really love about your run that I always come back to when reading it is you kind of describe this, the Hulk in Banner as kind of a metaphor for addiction, and the kind of sense of, if I could only control this one part of myself, I could have everything that I wanted. And I want to know, so like, does Hulk feel that way about Banner as well? And especially, you also have talked about how Hulk sees Banner as his enemy, especially after the most recent issue number 17. So does Hulk see Banner as this the one thing that he can't get rid of, and that he could live the life that he wants without that?
Not exactly like that. So Hulk is the part of himself. Hulk is the part of Banner that Banner hates and is afraid of and can't control. And Banner came first, and Hulk knows that. But now, so Hulk is the thing. Okay, Hulk is the thing that Banner is always thinking about and obsessing over and afraid of, and blah blah blah. Hulk only thinks about Banner when he has to. Like Hulk is bigger than that. Hulk would love to not think about Banner at all. So it's different. The power dynamic is different. Like Hulk thinks that Banner's puny and pathetic, and he'd rather just not think about him at all.
So I mean, I don't want to.
Lately, he has to, because he's much more enraged at Banner. These days, he's not ignoring Banner as much as like he's out to like punish Banner for what he's done to him most recently. So it has gotten a little more complicated and more. There's more animosity than there used to be. But ideally, Hulk would just be left alone, including by Banner. He just wants to exist and be left alone.
Yeah, but what does he want to do if he's left alone? Alone to do what?
He's not driven by goals the way that we are. Like the things that happen to, like, Hulk is okay, this is a huge tangent, but
I'm so sorry that I put us down this road.
It's okay. I like different. Okay, so different languages have different things to say about those cultures and about those frames of mind. It's different cultures are, you can find out a lot about them by the way their language is like structured. For example, like in Japanese, there's like the word for like the future tense stuff. Like when in our language, there's things that happened before, things that are happening now, things that will happen in the future. In Japanese, the words about that refer to the future have an element of uncertainty to it, because like no one knows what will happen in the future. So like I'm told, obviously I don't know anything about this directly, but when business dealings first started happening between the West and the East, they reportedly, like the people in the West found people in the East hard to work with, or like like kind of sneaky, because they would like there was always this like element of uncertainty, like, well, yes, we will do this thing, yes, we will pay you this, yes, this is how the arrangement will go, but who really knows in the end? Like there's these elements of uncertainty. Russian language, there's an element of the way that there's an element there of how to explain this. The way the words work, it's like things are being done to them. Like it's not there's it just kind of reflects all the awful shit that the Russian people have been through over the centuries. Like there's people talk about the world as things that act upon them as opposed to the opposite. So Hulk is ideally would just like live his life of peace and be left alone. Like Hulk doesn't have any great ambitions to my knowledge. I mean, I honestly don't know what Hulk would want, because things are always happening. He's always being pursued or attacked or hated, or the world is acting upon Hulk constantly. That's all Hulk has ever known. So if Hulk finally, like if Hulk actually did get sent to that place where they tried to send him, where they accidentally sent him to Planet Hulk instead, I don't know. That's actually an interesting question. I'd have to really think about that. Like, what would Hulk's life be like if he had, centuries, presumably, or maybe forever?
If he had the chance to
just be left alone, what would that look like? Well, like 1,000 years later, who would Hulk be? I don't know, because he's not really ever had that opportunity.
I think we got a story on our hand. If you ever want to brainstorm, Philip, I am available.
Yeah, let's do this. Let's drink a beer. Let's get a beer and figure it out.
Yeah, let's do it. But I could hear you talk about mythology and the Hulk lore all day. Again, Hulk has been one of my favorite titles, and I love it so much. I can't wait for more.
Oh, thank you, man. Sorry about the language tangent. It's like when I think about the world like acting upon Hulk, I think about anyway, I'm just a language
don't
guy.
Apologize. Like I said, we could talk about that all freaking day, but I have to move us along because we have other books to talk about. But
we'll try to get through this one pretty quick, but this is a book that we both really, really enjoyed. Philip, this is Crocodile Black. Yes. You did this Boom Studios, Sam on the art. Man, we were trying to analyze and break down this book every single month when it came out. But now that we have you here to talk about this, how would you summarize this story of this poor lad who just spiraled completely to a point out of control?
Yeah, I mean, it's a story about masks, right? It's about the power of masks, about like asks the question, I guess, is the mask is the mask the real face? Or is the person underneath the real thing, or does the mask become the real thing? Or and it all kind of starts with those questions from during a time of COVID, where masks are like this big hot button issue. And this kid Danny is a certain kind of person that of whom I know many now, who actually were more comfortable in masks than out of it. Like when COVID happened, there are people who are like, just don't really like socializing, don't really like being out in the world, who felt more comfortable doing so, with that mask kind of giving them that distance between everyone. They like being 6 feet away. They like being behind the thing and not being seen, being able to see others, but not being seen. Like that's a real thing. And I don't know, the story could only really take place during COVID. I was very disappointed during COVID when books were coming out. Now, part of it was, a lot of books got shut down because the industry was in trouble for a bit. But a lot of books that came out did not reflect COVID at all. Most of the books on the shelves, nobody's wearing masks, nobody was distancing. So whenever you open up those books, it just looked like a lie to me, or like a time capsule. Because at the time, that distance was happening, and nobody knew what the fuck was going to happen next. If this is just how the world's going to be now, like how comics are going to be affected, but also how just culture is our live performances now just a thing of the past forever? Like what's going to happen? And whenever I look at a comic or watch a movie or play a game or whatever, and everyone's like crowded in together on the street, in my mind, I just hear like too close, like everyone back off. Like this is all wrong now. And I thought that was kind of a cowardly approach. I always want art to kind of, express what we're going through, and at the time I heard this podcast about a guy who had died in New York with no family. And it was about just like what happens when that happens. And in that guy's apartment, there was a box with boots in it, like brand new, never opened boots. And for whatever reason, I had this image in my head, like what if they fit the guy that's bagging up all the stuff? What if he just like takes them? And I just kind of, in my head, I just imagined that dude's whole day, and it kind of spiraled out and became a much more interesting story about the guy, but also about the guy the dead guy, and how those boots kind of become that guy's mask. Like I envisioned that guy wearing a mask, and then he's got the boots, and then the boots kind of become the mask, and he's sort of like, okay, what's that guy's life look like? He lives at home with his folks, and he fucking hates it there. He's like sheltering in place, and everyone's going crazy, and he hates his dad, hates his life. He's got no future. He's just kind of a loser. It kind of got wrapped up with the thing that happened in real life, the Great Resignation, where everyone was kind of quitting their jobs or leaving their college degrees and just kind of finding their own way. It's like, fuck it, I want to start my business I've always wanted to do, or I'm going to pursue my thing of being a YouTuber or a snowboarder or whatever, like whatever the thing was they always wanted to do. Like, I'm going to do that. The world's ending anyway. Fuck it. It kind of became about that. Like, so this guy who by the old standard was kind of a loser with real mental health issues, saw his path to becoming the person he's always secretly wanted to be, which is a dangerous man. So yeah, it's about this guy finding his calling. This calling it's real bad.
It's real bad calling, but unfortunately, he was pretty good at it. Unfortunately, he was pretty good at it. Almost.
And Sam was just a perfect artist for it. When I found Sam, man,
the imagery.
Like, we needed somebody who could really capture that. Sam just has this way of illustrating. If you just check out his sketchbook, just the stuff that he does just for fun, way before this book came together, he has this amazing way of illustrating the grotesque intruding upon reality, like the grotesque intruding upon very mundane moments. And it was just perfect for what we wanted to do. Like, I wanted to see this guy's like psychosis slowly taking shape. At the beginning, we just see these like little crayon scribbles of this little kid that we don't know who the kid is or what happened. Even he doesn't really remember what happened. All those memories have been repressed. And then as time goes on, we realize what happened and what the boots mean, why they're crocodile skin, why they're stuck in his head the way that they are. And those things become more and more a part of the visual tapestry of the world that he lives in. And Sam was just the perfect artist for that.
Yeah, definitely go check this out if you haven't read it. I believe the trade is out soon, if not now. So
yeah, it should be out pretty soon.
Absolutely go pick this up. TJ and I, we gushed about it every single month it came out. And some weeks we were like, did it come out this week? Did it come out this week?
Oh, so thanks, man. I appreciate that.
Great story. We really enjoyed it. And again, of course, shout out Sam's art. But as you mentioned, a story about someone whose calling is a little bit more violent than maybe to be expected. This is the last book we'll discuss because the second issue of this brand new arc, this brand new story of Batman and Robin is coming out today as when this episode drops. Philip, you said this at Terrificon, that this is the story you've always wanted to tell with these two.
Yeah, that's true. I sometimes people will ask if I have stories all kind of like ready to go for various characters. The answer is no. I do not have time to just make up stories that may or may not ever exist. But for this one, I did have it kind of ready, not like completely fleshed out and ready, because every book comes together when you know who your co-creators are, when you know how many issues you have, when you know what the context of the story is going to be in a shared universe. Like if right now, if just knowing, I have to know what's going on in the other books, the other Batman books, and which characters are alive or dead, or what's happening in the DC universe at large, and all those things affect it. So I didn't have scripts just sitting around or anything. But I did have a father-son story that I really wanted to tell. I've got a young son, and he and I are just insanely close. And he's been a huge Batman fan his whole life. And I don't know, the story kind of came together in my mind. I thought it was going to be like a Black Label story. At some point, I was going to pitch it as like a Black Label thing, or maybe as a Detective Comics story. But there always would have been would have been very Damian centric. So honestly, the best place for it was a Batman and Robin book. So yeah, this is a character I have Damon, as you've noticed from my Superman stuff, I have very clear opinions on Superman, like who he should be, what his voice is like. I just really wanted to show everyone the vision that I had of who Superman is. I've got that for Batman too. And I love writing Superman as a father, because he's just the ideal father. He's exactly the dad that everyone wants and should have and should be. Batman is not that thing. Batman is, raises soldiers. Yeah. Batman raises soldiers kind of without their consent. He kind of conscripts children to do his thing.
Child army.
And yeah, like he's I mean, we all had our moments, I'm sure, of not wanting to disappoint our fathers growing up. Like, what if your dad is literally Batman?
Vengeance.
And that's got to be awful. Like, he's the most squared away human being on Earth, but also super dark and like maximally nth degree intense. I mean, being his kid has got to be just the worst thing. But I mean, Damian is kind of busted in very similar ways. So I don't know. It's just a fascinating dynamic that I could not wait to tell. But it's also about Gotham. Like I love, as you say, TJ, I love lore. I love mythology, but also just like lore and backstory and world building. I have clear opinions about Gotham. I want my Batman stories to be detective stories. I want Gotham to be like rainy and foggy with the blimps, and just I want it to look a certain kind of way. I want this to be like a detective noir story. So our villain is one that I've created for the story named Memento, and it's a legit murder mystery. We don't know who's under the mask. We don't know who's involved. We don't know the back history yet. But he's helping us to get that Gotham that I want to see. He's kind of like a cross between Aleister Crowley and Jack the Ripper. And he's scary, man. And he's a scary villain. People die, bad things happen. We see that it ties into Batman's history back from when he was on his walkabout as when he was basically Damian's age. And we get to see flashbacks, almost like a True Detective kind of situation, where we see flashbacks where Batman is at Damian's age, and then we see Damian now. And we get to kind of compare and contrast those two characters and how they're different and how they're similar. And it's so fun. I'm having an amazing time on this book. So hope you dig it. But yeah, as you say, issue 15, the second issue of the arc, just came out, and Javi Fernandez and Marcelo, the colorist, and Steve Wands, the letterer, everybody is just crushing the shit out of their jobs, and I could not be happier with it.
Everyone get all in on DC, all in initiative. Issue 14 was the first of the arc, so you just have to go back one issue to go pick up this new issue, and then you're all caught up with the story, so go check it out. I read this issue 14. It was great, Philip. Really dug it. Such a fun dynamic between Damian and Bruce, as always, especially between the Bruce and Damian personas, too, because it's not just the Batman and Robin aspect. You also have, like, Bruce, the playboy millionaire, and then you have his kid who just does not want to be at any of these events, but he has to because he's the son of Bruce.
He's kind of
too is
he's kind of at that shitty age, which is fun.
Yeah,
and And again, I try to imagine these characters at those ages where
Mhm.
everybody is kind of a certain way, but in the context of being a superhero too. Like, how is it different? Man, in this next issue, we see a lot more of Batman and Robin, of Bruce and Damian, as you say, but also a good bit more of Memento. So I'm excited for you to see. Like, there's a thing that happens that, like, the actual inciting incident, the thing that kind of gets the whole adventure rolling, the spark that kind of blows everything up. That happens in issue 15, the one that drops today.
Mhm.
I really wanted to put it at the end of the previous issue, but we just didn't have the pages. Like, we just couldn't quite get it. The whole book would have felt so rushed to get to that last beat on the last page of that issue. So we decided to save it for this issue, so that the first issue really would, sing, make the art really pop. I didn't want to. That first action sequence in issue 14 was so dope. I didn't want to cheat that. I didn't want to cheat Javi at all for the art on that scene. So I was like, let's just save the big thing for the next issue. So yeah, today's issue is the one you got to get onto. So please pick that up. Super stoked for it. There's also, when I write Batman and Bruce, I write him differently. Like, when Bruce is in public and being seen, he speaks more like the expectation of a Bruce Wayne.
Mhm.
And when he speaks when he's alone and you're reading his inner monologue, or when he's talking just to Damian or one of his other allies, he speaks differently.
Mhm.
And like, one of those differences is, I like the work of Cormac McCarthy a lot, the great novelist. And he had this weird thing where he didn't use punctuation hardly at all. He would use periods at the end of his sentences. And every now and then, I mean, almost never, he would use a comma, and that's it. He didn't even use quotation marks around quotes. It's just this really stark, harsh way to write, but the language itself is so unbelievably beautiful. It can be very bleak and sad, but it's also just incredibly beautiful. But so clear that you don't need anything frivolous. That is how Batman speaks. Batman speaks very, not beautifully, but like every sentence, like, Batman almost never uses a comma. Everything he says is just a stone. When he's Bruce Wayne, that's no longer the case, and you can almost feel the language get much more florid. And I mean, not like fancy pants stupid, but more like the rest of us, like more, all these little niceties kind of added back in that make it much more comfortable and cozy to listen to. When Batman's speaking, it's almost mean, and I don't know. I love writing those guys. It's so fucking fun. But in my mind, they're two different people, because one of them is just a big act.
And the real act is Bruce Wayne.
Yeah,
In
exactly.
my opinion. That's how I've always looked at it. And TJ always jokes with me. We always joke with each other. I use commas up the wazoo when commas should never, ever, ever be used, type of thing. I have horrible grammar. So my commas when I'm writing is just atrocious. So I could probably never be Batman just because of that.
Cormac McCarthy, check it out. It'll change your life.
All right.
I also really quickly, we have to wrap up and we don't have time to talk about this book. So I just wanted to shout it out. John Stewart, War Journal, absolutely awesome, dude. I love that series. It has been absolutely great. So anyone listening to this or watching, I know we didn't get into it, but go pick that up too, because that is an awesome book.
Thank you, man. Super proud of it. There's actually tomorrow, there's a dedication, or today rather, I guess. No, it is tomorrow. Okay, so Thursday. Sorry, we're recording this the night before.
The future.
Time travel.
Yeah. Yeah. So tomorrow there's a Green Lantern statue being dedicated in Burbank, California. So I'm actually going to be out there like tomorrow for that.
Hey, I gotta check my schedule. Maybe I'll see you there. I might have to go on out there.
Yeah, dude, get out there. It's
awesome.
10 a.m. I think.
10 a.m.
Yeah, I'll check it out.
Put it on this Thursday, baby.
Yeah,
Thursday. Perfect.
Exactly. Perfect. New Year coming.
Phil, thank you so much for taking the time. It is so appreciated to say
of course,
here in
guys.
chat. Everything.
Yeah, it's great to see you. Great to see you both again. Thanks for making the time.
Of course. Is there anything before we go you like to plug that you haven't talked about today?
Oh man, I think all the shit that I have coming out. Oh no, actually, so Hellhunters is coming out in December, and I am really excited about that. Look at that, you guys are ready. That's
killing knots. We didn't think we had time for it, but we had to load it up.
Look at you. So Hellhunters comes out next month, and man, actually, this is a great time to talk about it too, because the FOC for that is on Monday.
There you go.
So
Go out,
please
people.
order
Get
this
it.
book. This is a passion project, man. Like all these other books that we're talking about. Well, I don't know about Green Lantern, but all these other books that I'm doing, Batman and Robin. There would have been a Batman and Robin book no matter what. There would have been an Action Comics no matter what. I mean, this is a big 2 book that would not exist if I hadn't pitched it. Like this is a passion project for me. This is Marvel's Inglorious Bastards, straight up. I just cannot wait for people to see what we're doing. This is like the biggest badasses in the Marvel universe in World War II, just killing Nazis. Perfect. And I mean, there's more of a story there than that, but yeah, I mean, it's their nature's perfect villain.
Yeah. I heard you talk about Bucky being a psycho and all. Like, this is going to be so good. Again, go final order cutoff Monday. Go to the shop right now. Call them on the cell phone. Pause this video and go do it right now.
Go on your previews, whatever you do.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're going to love it. The vibe, it kind of feels like the old World War II action movies, like the John Wayne type stuff with Steve McQueen. It kind of feels like those. I kind of want to, like, most comic series are kind of like, they have a feel of like just the TV series that never ends. It's just like every month it's out. It never ends. And if they extend it, they just make it longer. I want this to feel more like a series of films, like where like a mini series comes out. It's awesome. And then a little time passes and then the sequel comes out and it's awesome too. And then like the team might be like a little different. Like maybe one of the characters gets killed. Maybe somebody else, joins the team. Each one has its own. It might only, one of them might only use 2 or 3 of these characters. I mean, on its face, it's kind of like the origin story of Ghost Rider 44, who we introduce in the Incredible Hulk, as TJ would know.
Yes, sir.
So yeah, we introduce Sal Romero in the pages of Incredible Hulk, Ghost Rider 44. And this is his origin story and the team that he was a part of back during the war. So I'm mad excited about it. This is always the story I wanted to do. They actually offered me a chance to write Ghost Rider years ago at Marvel. Not a long time. I'd not been in comics that long, but some years ago. And it would have been a really great opportunity for me at that time too. But I was just completely underwater. I didn't have the time to really do it right. I was like, man, I just can't. But I was like, you know what? I kind of have this Nazi problem. Like I would, if you let me do a World War II Ghost Rider, it's like just a Nazi kill fantasy, I'll do that. And they were like, we really want it to be Johnny Blaze. And like, I'm busy. I can't do it.
Call me later.
Yeah, I wasn't able to do it. But as soon as we got on Incredible Hulk, I was like, I know exactly who I'm bringing in. And I kind of brought it all together. We were able to make this team book come together. So, man, I'm excited about it. So please check this out. I'm mad stoked for it.
Beautiful. Comics. What a magical thing. Phillip, once again, thank you for taking the time. You can catch our weekly show, The Comic Corner, where we do news and reviews and, yes, interviews here as well. And make sure you like and subscribe to us here at the Agents of Fandom channel, where we do everything from comics to TV to movies and all that good stuff. TJ, I'll see you tomorrow, where we'll be chatting all about comics. Phillip, once again, thank you for taking the time. As always, look at that.
Yes, dude, me and Phillip, we are one of the same mind, dude.
Yeah. This is the God of War one, but
I would say God of War one. Let's go.
All right. Anyway, thanks for having me on. Sorry I cursed so much.
Oh, you're good. You're absolutely good. Thank you for taking the time. And as always, go read some comics and go support your local comic shop. Until next.